And welcome. It's time for your weekly Viva Virtuoso live podcast. Today we have a great guest for episode 7. It is Carlos Bass Chops. Oh, wow. Where'd that come from? Bass Chops Rivera Jr. Carlos,
Thank
welcome
you.
to our show.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege and an honor, as they say. Looking forward to it.
And being Captain Obvious here, what instrument do you play, by the way?
I play the bass, or more commonly referred to as the big cello.
The big cello,
That's what I
the,
get most of the time.
the little orca. So I got to ask you because we didn't really talk about this before, but what about the travails of being a bass player? I mean, at least with the piano player, there's going to be a piano where I go, um, and you got to be. I had a boss once that told. I'll put it this way: I had this boss that told me a story, and he said, there's going to be breakfast, ham and eggs for breakfast, and there's a
Okay.
chicken and a pig there, right? And the chicken is participating, but the pig is committed, right? And I'm thinking of you in a band with like a harmonica player or a castanet player, and
Right.
then
Where
you like and they're participating, but you're committed. So 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 tell us what it's like being a bass player in a physical sense.
Well, luckily, it's nothing like being a drummer or percussionist. I think that's definitely a level a level harder as far as moving. I think automatically of moving gear. I sit in a pit, ready to do a musical, and I look over to the percussion player and I see four timpani, a bass drum, glockenspiel, a xylophone, all the toys, a brake drum, um, and I'm thinking to myself, wow. I hope they're paying him more than me. Uh, but for me, I mean, yes, it is definitely a very committed relationship, especially if I'm doing something with electric as well. So I mean, I'm hauling her around and my electric and my bass amp and my stool and sometimes my stand, and then I have my tuxedo or my suit or my pit blacks that I'm wearing, as well as food or water of some sort, because who knows whether they're gonna. So it's sometimes I feel like a pack mule, and on certain occasions you'll see me, wheeling with all this stuff on me, and people I think will just stop and stare, not because I'm a musician or a bass player, but just because they're wondering how's he going to get through the door.
Yes, how's he going to get through the door?
And
And
that is,
and what a and why does the piccolo player get paid the same amount as you and the drummer?
well, they get a lot more notes, I think, than I do. That is for
Ah,
sure.
they get paid by. Okay, hadn't thought of that. Good one. So
So
so the bass isn't the normal. I mean, the normal, usual first choice you think for an instrument, especially something large like that. So, how did it happen in your life for you to come across the big cello? Is that what you called it?
yes, yeah, that's right. The big cello. That's right.
Okay.
Very good, Warren. Uh, it all started. I started on this musical journey, if you will, when I want to say in fifth grade, and I started with the piano, as I think most kids do in music. They start with the piano, and by the time I got to junior high, was I want to say 13. Um, I was just put in a string class as my elective, and I still don't know to this day whether that my parents chose that or if that was just kismet, as they say. And our string teacher put out the violin and the viola and the cello and the bass, and she played a little bit of each, and then um, and she said, "Oh, and this is," she got to the bass. She goes, "Oh, this is the bass." She goes, "This is the easiest of all the instruments." And of course, being a boy, I was like, "Well, that's for me. That's great. That's easy. That's perfect." But then, of course, I forgot that I had to carry it home every day because I couldn't get a ride. So
Yeah, yeah. I think there's a little gullibility going on in there.
Yes, exactly. So, and that, honestly, once I did start, I didn't mind anything about it. I didn't mind anything about the size. I mean, I did fall in love with the tone right away. Um, I was very diligent about it. I practiced every day. I took my bass home every day. I carried it, even though I had to stop every couple blocks, because I'd get, harassed or looks, of course. Here's this little Hispanic kid carrying this body bag around. I mean, it makes you stop and wonder.
But what happened? You fell in love with music,
I
didn't
fell in
you?
love with it, and I stuck with it. I played it, like I said, all through when I was, like I said, 12, 13, and played it through junior high. And then my teacher at the time, my music teacher at school, told me about an arts high school in Los Angeles, the LA County High School for the Arts, short, LACSA for short. And she told me, you should audition. I mean, you love doing this. You should go somewhere where it's specialized in playing music and learning more about music. And so she told me to take a bass over the summer and practice and practice. And it turns out one thing led to another, where she wasn't coming back. She was going on sabbatical or maternity leave, and I had the instrument. And unfortunately, the school program at my junior high was closing down, and she knew that I would need an instrument, and she gifted me my first instrument, which I could not be more thankful, that because my parents couldn't afford, to get me an instrument. And there was no way I could pay for an instrument. So it was a blessing. It was a true blessing in disguise. And I got into the high school, and then I had that instrument, whoo, all the way through grad school. By the time I got to USC, which I couldn't believe I was still playing that same instrument. Which by the time I got there, my teacher was like, "I think it's time for an upgrade," and I could not agree more. And then, well, then the hunt for an instrument, and that was a whole other, whole other story.
But it's kind of interesting in a kind of a fatalistic way that you were in a position where you had this bass, but it wasn't yours, and a high school program, uh, and you catapulted into actually having a bass and being part of a much richer program. Um, what did that like? What did that do for your attitude and your just like? Did you just jump after that?
Yes, I did. I knew I was in a I don't want to say a lucky position, but I felt that it was destined. I mean, and granted, this is looking back in hindsight, thinking, wow, all these chips just seem to fall right into place one after the other. And while I was in high school, yes, of course. I mean, as teenagers do, yes, I slacked off a little, of course. Didn't take, every opportunity, but the ones that I did, I relished in. Um, and I knew I was lucky. I knew I was lucky, and that I needed to pursue this, not because I felt obligated, but because there was a connection between me and music, and the instrument, really. Um, I mean, the other instruments are beautiful and they're great, but everyone has a connection, and most instrumentalists will know exactly. All instrumentalists will know exactly what I mean. You have a connection with your main instrument that you started with. So, um, yeah.
And so at that time, what kind of music were you mostly playing and listening to and learning?
Uh, Honestly, I was playing all classical music. I mean, that's all I was learning. There wasn't a lot of music in my home. we didn't listen to anything. I mean, the only I remember, and this is at a younger age, back in like elementary school, is just falling asleep to classical music. My father always turning on the local classical station. And that's what I would fall asleep to. But other than that, there was really no other music besides my mom singing when she was cooking, because that was her passion, is to sing and to cook. And other than that, I really didn't listen to a whole lot of anything, even anything on the radio. There was nothing that really sparked my interest or caught my attention. And I still question that, why that is. It wasn't really later in high school, maybe my last year, where I started to listen to more alternative music. And it's funny, that's where I started listening to Oingo Boingo. And some people may wonder, what is that? And most people I can say, oh, have you heard of Danny Elfman? And people will be like, oh yeah, this film score composer. I'm like, well, he had a very, very quirky band back in the day, that catapulted him to where he is at now. And that I started listening to that, and that caught my attention instantly. Um, I think maybe because of the quirkiness of the music, and how it was very, very much like a film score already when you listen to that stuff. Um, so I started listening to a lot of alternative stuff like that, a lot of bass driven things that friends would say, oh, you got to listen to this, you got to listen to this, you got to listen to this. And so it wasn't really until later that I started listening to music and say, oh, okay, well, this is kind of cool. I didn't know that you could play this type of music. I didn't know that this type of music was even out there. I didn't start listening to Led Zeppelin until I was 19, 20.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was like, what is this magical music I'm hearing? Um,
And how about on the jazz side?
On the jazz side, really, once again, no one had ever opened that door for me. No one had ever opened the door and said, "Hey, look, check this out." So jazz, really, I mean, that wasn't until maybe during grad school where I started to appreciate it. I didn't delve into the world because I was already into the classical world. Learning excerpts, taking auditions, learning solos. And I kick myself still for not, while I was in school, to stop and say, yeah, you know what, I should study with, the bass teacher, especially at USC. Ron Carter was teaching there. Why? I mean, hello.
Yeah, pretty much top shelf.
Exactly. I don't know why someone didn't just take me by, and slap me and say, go take a
Interesting.
lesson.
Yeah.
So once again, in hindsight, it was there was that opportunity that I didn't, because I was so wrapped up in the classical world and learning all of this, um, that I didn't stop to think, I guess, of the bigger picture, until later, where you're like,
Right.
oh, so now mostly I'm, playing, musical theater, classical music, jazz. Yeah, I can read a chart and, lead sheet and walk a line and stuff. But there's obviously so much more out there, as far as that jazz world that I'm not in. Um, that I'm sure I will be at some point.
Now I know our producer Nikki had a lot of fun in our pre-production, and I was hoping she might show herself today and maybe jump in and chime in with a question or
Oh,
comment. Nikki, are you there?
hmm.
Okay. Well, maybe
There's
she'll join us.
maybe there's a genie lamp we have to
Ah,
rub.
there she is. There
Oh,
she is.
see.
She does exist. We
But
just we don't have your audio though. Not yet.
it's like
You know, we lost you on the feed. Um, maybe we'll just chat a little bit and we'll get things worked out. How does that sound?
Okay. No
Uh,
worries.
so how did your parents feel about your bass playing, being non musicians and having this very gifted son that has this instrument? How did they?
They could have not been more elated, I think. I know. I mean, there wasn't one performance that they would miss that I could even think of. Even starting, with my first concert when I was in seventh grade, or even when I was taking piano and I had a recital at the local studio. And it's I wasn't a virtuosic piano player or anything, but they were still very, very, very supportive, and that support never ended. Even in you know even in college, um, the director of the program and my father became good friends, and he'd always razz me about, oh, are you bringing your camera crew this weekend to the concert? And that was my father, because my father had the video camera and the still
Mm,
camera, the
right,
tripod, and the you know
the
so
proud dad.
the proud dad, ever the proud father. Which I can, of course, once again, in hindsight, I cannot appreciate enough. They never questioned it. They never asked if I was sure if this was something I wanted to do. I think they just saw it was something that I loved, and that I gave myself to, wholly. And they just always, were just, yeah, go for it, do it. Yeah, you want to do this, great. Even when I wanted to buy an instrument, they were fully supportive of, we'll find a way to make this happen. You just let us know what you need, and then we'll try. So it was something that I could never repay. I mean, there's no real way to repay and to say thank you, except for thank you, and I love you for all that support. Um, they were there through every step of the way. They even have a little shrine at their place, with all my awards and pictures, and that all my friends would give me a hard time about. He was like, "Hey, do you know that you have a shrine?" Yes, I know that there's a shrine at my parents' house. Even to this day, there is still a little shrine with all my awards, and I can't help but laugh, every time I see it. But still, a lot of laugh, but with a sense of pride,
Yes.
that I had both, these people in my corner, um, you know, supporting me every step of the way through, through high school, through college, through grad school, even concerts, instrument purchases, travel, touring, all that stuff. So always asking me how I'm doing, how music is doing, how my teaching is going. So still, even now, when I talk with my mom, she's, asking how's work, are you playing, are you teaching? So I could not be more lucky for that. So I know there's a lot of other horror stories where, you hear, you're a musician, what? You don't want to do that. No one does that. There's no money in that. But it was always more about the love of the craft, than it was about money. So,
Neat, neat. And we love you, Carlos's parents at Viva Virtuoso. Thank you for setting him up to be a bass player. Hey, Nikki's here.
Hi
yeah,
there. Is this working
woo,
now?
Oh
yes,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, you're here.
Oh,
We have
much
a
producer. All right, yeah. Have issues because there's two of me, as you two know. Carlos, how are you doing?
I'm
How's
doing
it
well.
going?
How are you? Good to see you. Good to hear you.
Yeah, well, I'm good, except I'm playing pretty much like three roles, but in my life that's normal. Yeah, as Warren mentioned, I do have some questions for you, more on the audience side because Warren's the musician here. I'm just a layman who's really good at listening with deep adoration of music. So tell me this: how much do you miss live gigs?
It,
Sorry,
uh,
I had
it,
to go for that.
no, no, it is really a very, very valid question. With multiple I miss playing live, and I must say, in I want to say the last month or two, slowly, I've had small jobs here and there where I'm getting to, wet my whistle with just like it's a tease, really. But I miss playing live gigs, for the camaraderie of the other musicians.
Yeah.
I found during this downtime that my social life came from work. I mean, that's when we would hang. You'd see friends that you'd see on gigs. Hey, how's it going? Or and you'd talk before or after. You'd grab a beer, have some dinner or lunch, whatever, and that was your or my social life. And all this, everything stopped. And 3/4 of the way in, I was thinking, man, I gotta get out and talk with someone, because I suddenly realized, wow, the only people calling me are my mom and my students. I mean, I gotta connect somehow. Which, of course, I think with a lot of musicians, a lot of people that are used to being in their craft, found that they were alone all of a sudden. Which brings
Yeah.
other problems. I mean, you can talk about anxiety and depression, because it's true. I mean, I'm not an anxious person. I usually have a great outlook on everything, and I was just, I felt like I was under the covers, like, oh my God, when is this going to end? But I miss it terribly. And luckily, like I said, I've been able to. I played a wedding not too long ago down in Huntington Beach. I did a recording out in Santa Clarita at the Master's College for something they were doing. And I did some sideline work at the Greek Theater, which was fantastic, just to be out, even there wasn't a lot of playing going on, but just to be with everyone there. And you feel that sense of support from every musician on stage.
Right. So did your colleagues, did the others feel the same way? Like,
Yes.
was this sort of like a homecoming?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, the very first concert I did outdoors was with a small company called Los Angeles Curbside Entertainment. And she took her stimulus check and she said, if you can order food and everything else online, why can't you order music? So she built a website, a lot of marketing materials, and just contacted, obviously other musicians to say, hey, I want to put together small groups to just play music for people outside. So I played a few concerts outside. It was, not very big group, socially distanced, wearing masks, in neighborhoods, in a cul-de-sac, with people that hadn't heard live music from an orchestra, which was fantastic to see, people sticking their heads out, what's going on? What is this? And just that first interaction I had, I talking with a lot of my colleagues just about how they were feeling exactly the same way I had been feeling. The depression and the anxiety of what's going to happen. What do I do next? This is what I've done all my life. Now what? So and the other part of that is I miss connecting with audience members. So I miss you, Nikki. I miss your,
I know.
the music appreciator. I mean, without you guys, we wouldn't be here. So I mean,
and we miss you. Trust me.
So that is that's the other half of it for me, is connecting and helping one person, 5 people, 10 people, 100 people, 1,000, just escape, for a few hours, to leave everything behind for, and
just
create a memory.
Deflate, relax.
Yes.
So Warren, actually, Carlos had a question right there, and you're not used to being, you're used to being in the interviewer seat, not the interviewee. So what do you think? What comes next?
For musicians?
Yeah, for musicians, for audiences, for music,
Well,
for live music.
well, I think that the phrase I keep hearing is the new normal, and everyone's trying to figure out what the new normal will be. Uh, and I think that there's some consistency that the new normal is not going to be what the past was. Whatever it is, it's not going to be what the past was. So I think that there will be just as we've leaned on technology to work around lots of issues with just completing our jobs, getting food on our tables, getting medicine in our homes. We're going to see some legacy of that continue and probably flourish to some degree in the arts because it's going to be a risky business for a lot of people to make investments in large tours and things like that. So I see technology, I see live streaming, I see connecting using technology to connect audiences to performance as being a big part of the future. Certainly not. There will be nothing like having a live right in front of you experience. But I certainly think it's going to be augmented or in certain areas replaced by other access methods.
And Carlos, what do you think, or rather, what do you think is going to happen, and what are you hoping for?
Well,
Oh
I
man,
think,
I'm asking all the hard questions tonight, huh?
man,
Today.
all the in-depth questions. Obviously hoping that we can just get back to normal, not even a new normal. Um, but in reality, that probably won't be for a long time. Um, the new normal, as everyone's saying, I think is going to require a lot of, I want to say, tippy toeing just to make everyone feel comfortable. Although I feel like there's this line of people that just, if there's a live concert, I don't care. I want to go. I need to get that. I need to feel that. And then there's that other half that's like, oh, I'm gonna live stream it. So, and maybe the new normal is both. That's a question that I've asked. Even not just with pop music, but with classical music. I mean, I would love to watch a live stream, of Berlin or London or Chicago, or the LA Phil. I would pay money to watch a live stream of that. Sometimes I can't go, because I'm working. So maybe the new normal is now a combination of, as Warren said, of technology and attending live performances. So, and honestly, I'm just hoping to play. I'm just hoping to get out there and make music uh, with my friends and for friends.
All right, Warren, I'm going to hand it back to you for now, but I am going to hang with you guys some more because I do have more questions. I've got a million questions for you.
Absolutely. So you've described sort of this awakening period you had where you had been consumed with symphonic and orchestral music and uh, went through a several year odyssey of discovering alternative and hard rock and all these different genres, and you get into this Oingo Boingo situation. I want you to talk about those days, those concerts, and the experience. Like it seems like going from water that's one temperature that's like 30 degrees different, like in one step. So tell me about that transition and what it
That
was.
was so I had started dabbling in electric bass back in junior high, but nothing really came of it. I messed around on it a little bit. I played in jazz band, and read the charts and things like that. And it really wasn't until later, as I said, when I Oingo Boingo caught my attention, caught my ear. I and I listened to that and just listened to it until it broke. The picture now that you've got up, that's live at the Lido down in Newport Beach, which was, I remember, I mean, a fantastic show. I think we had, I'm pretty sure we sold that show out. What I loved a lot about that, doing those live shows, is that everyone that was there to see the show knew what they were coming to see. It was never an accident. That band has got such a niche, for the sound that it creates, that the fans were there because they loved that music, or I still love that music. So, I mean, we would sell out show after show. I mean, 400, 500 people. And it was amazing and an honor, really, to pay tribute to that band. It was kind of a fluke. It was like 6 degrees of separation almost. My girlfriend at the time knew the keyboard player, and I didn't, and I met him, and we got to talking, and then he told me about, that he was playing in a tribute group, Dead Man's Party, tribute to Danny Elfman and Oingo Boingo. And I was like, oh my God, I love that band. It's amazing. And he then says to me, he was like, oh, well, why, I didn't know that. And we were just looking for a bass player. So I had just missed this like audition for the band by a day. And I'm thinking, oh God, what an opportunity to play that music. And a few months go by, and the bass player that was there had another opportunity that came up, and we had just met recently on an orchestral gig, and he said, something you would think? And I was like, yes. Oh my God, I can't believe that I'm even getting asked this. So from there, it was just, I had to wrap my head around this music, going from, something so, like you said, a different temperature for sure. And I remember our first rehearsal, it's a full band, right? 3-piece horn, bass, drum, get 2 guitars, backup vocals. And I had to learn how to play the balafone. And I also had to play the keytar. So here I am scratching my head thinking, okay, well, I love a musical challenge, so let's do this. So it was an amazing time. I got to play with the group for about 6 years, and that's where I got to let my hair down.
Yeah, let me ask you a little bit about that, because did that experience change the way you looked at how you present yourself visually?
Yes. Yes. Well, yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, one of the pictures you see, like I've got red hair, and obviously I've got, the mutton chops, as some may say. But I mean, like with this look, and obviously I don't have the red hair anymore, but I had that since, there you go. Yes. I'd had that look since about 2002. So it's interesting that it just kind of fit. Like when the rest of the band members saw me, they were like, oh yeah, this is going to be a perfect fit. I mean, look at that.
How about the visual? How about the visual, and just from standpoint of pure movement with the instrument?
That was very liberating to be able to. At first, it was a little like, well, it's like I had to feel my way around. Like I felt like I was in a dark room, just kind of trying to feel out the room to see what was where. And after the first show, it was, I want to say it was after the first show, I was like, okay, no holds barred. I'm running back and forth. I'm laying down on the floor. I'm jumping up and down. I'm getting the audience clapping. It's a show. Cause I'm thinking as an audience member, like I want to show I want the audience to engage with other, to have a great time and lose yourself. It's music that you love. So let me help you. Let me take my hand and come with me, and we're just going to have a great time. So, I mean, the audiences when I was there were, I mean, I sometimes I feel like they were overwhelming. I mean, it got to a point later where, you know, like we would walk in the room and everyone was like, oh, look, oh, hey, oh, hey. You know, it's like everyone would be whispering. I'm like, what's everyone whispering for? I'm just like you. It's no big deal. I'm lucky and I get to play this music.
So I'd point people to your YouTube channel, because I think you're starting to get content up there. So we definitely want to get everyone out there to your channel, so you can tell them where it is as I finish this question. But that theatricality, it looks like you're taking into the content you're preparing. And I'm thinking specifically of a video you have of Cool from West Side Story.
Love that. When I got to perform that in an actual theatrical setting, it was unforgettable. It's something that's still that I still can't forget. We had a 32-piece orchestra. This was at the Carpenter Center in Long Beach. And I'm 32-piece orchestra. I mean, that doesn't happen. That just doesn't happen. But for this, it was deserved. I mean, to play that music, I think with nothing less, it just doesn't do it justice. And from then it stuck with me. And, you know, it's so funny because every once in a while I'll catch myself just humming Cool. And I'll just catch myself singing that over and over. And I was thinking, you know what? A good friend of mine during this was bugging me. You know, you should put out some content. You need to put out some content. You need to put. And so finally, I was just like, okay, I'll try to learn how to do all this. And that was one of the first videos I did, was Cool. And it was, you know, it was a little cheesy, but I just loved it because it's just such a great tune. I was like, I got to do it. I got to make it. I got to ham it up a little bit.
Yeah, and you even have the costumery for it.
Yes, I was like, well, I've got this beautiful leather jacket I don't get to wear. I get to put my hair up.
Why not?
You know, all I was missing was my roll of cigarettes right here. You know, I mean.
You just mentioned something that we talked about a little bit before the show, and that is that whole you know, audience performer relationship. And I mean, obviously it's there during the performance, we all know it. And music is something that we can all relate to. You know, our favorite songs are things that we identify with, you know, stories and voices and people that we can relate to in one way or another. But you said that you wondered, or rather we wondered together, about why more people from the audience don't approach performers. And, you know, and by the way, you're a foodie, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. You're an at-home chef and a foodie.
I try.
Right. And so it's, you know, it's similar with chefs and people who work in professional kitchens and restaurants. Like, why don't you just, you know, go and tell the chef, or ask the waiter to go and tell the chef, like, yeah, I really enjoyed that. That was exceptional. So why do you think audience members, or, you know, people sitting in the audience, because I mean, we're all people, come on. Why do you think they don't approach you and other performers after a performance? Or, you know what, for that matter, during a performance?
Even better. And it's fun. I love where you went there, the script, using that as at a restaurant, because it's true. At a restaurant, you know, you enjoy your meal. I mean, I guess that's a little, you feel a little out of sight, out of mind, which, you know, is the thing. It's something that happens with performances. You know, if I was at a restaurant, obviously I don't see the chef, but I'm thinking, man, I really did enjoy this. So good, you know. And in, you know, instances, you do sometimes, every once in a while, you do see the chef walking around, and you know that I will be the first one to, like, let me shake your hand. This was, you know, and that is a question that I've asked myself, and not in a, but I know that audiences are appreciative, and I think to myself, I'm like, well, you know, they see us. I mean, they see us, you know, walking around the audience at times, or if I'm leaving the show, you know, I have my, you can't miss this thing. I mean, even if you don't know who I am, like, you know, I'm not carrying it around for exercise. I know you liked the show, even if you were to say, you know, we loved the show. I mean, if there are you know, music appreciators, you know, watching this, you know, I can all I can say is, you know, if you see a performer, whether they were the main, you know, person, or they in the ensemble, or the, you know, the lonely triangle player back there, you know, I mean, tell them you enjoyed it. I mean, it's interesting, and sometimes I feel like, from an audience perspective, that an audience doesn't understand how that fuels us, right?
Especially to a lonely triangle player.
I know, right? The poor guy runs out.
Goes tinkle.
Thank you, thank you. You know,
No one notices.
no notice. Everyone just like, oh, whatever, just part of the show, you know. And I mean, there have been instances where, you know, I hear people talking, you know, you're in the lobby and you hear people talking, and, you know, this is during like a musical theater show, maybe during the break or beforehand, where people don't even realize there's an orchestra playing. And they think it's just canned music. I'm like, really? That's what you, okay, that's,
What's that?
and that I can't wrap my head around that. I mean, even if you're seeing something on Broadway, like,
I mean, I'm thinking like, what are they? What's that secret ritual going on down, like, just underneath the stage?
they're all dressed in black and it's foggy down there. What's going on?
It's dark and mysterious with weird sounds. Who are those hobbits? Who are those hobbits?
Yeah, so I don't know what that, is. That line between, you know, performer and audience member, and maybe an audience member, you know, had a bad experience with a performer once, you know. I mean, there are some performers that think a little too much of themselves, maybe, and forget the reason why they're there. But I would say, nonetheless, be brave. Thank the performer, even if it's the lowly triangle player, you know, because 9 times out of 10, we will greatly appreciate it. A quick story on that, very quick story. Two very good friends were playing the run of Wicked at the Pantages in Hollywood, drummer and the guitar player. You know, great show. They're going out the artist entrance, and every night there was a line of fans, you know, waiting for, you know, the leads of the show or the stars of the show to come out so they can have their playbill signed. And, you know, so, you know, the guitar player and the drummer, you know, obviously the drummer's all his stuff there, the guitar player's, you know, leave his stuff there. And, you know, they go out the artist entrance, and, you know, everyone's clamoring up with their playbill, sign. And they're like, oh, you know, and so the drummer, you know, takes the playbill and he's, you know, who can I sign this, make this out to? And you know, she gives her name, and she asks, oh, you know, what role did you play in the show? What? And so my friend says, oh, I'm the drummer. I played the drums on the whole show. And she snatches the playbill out of his hand.
Ooh,
And says,
burn.
oh, I thought you were someone important.
Wow. Oh, well, there's no show without him, so, you know. But that's not important.
Exactly. So
it's just percussion. I mean, big deal, right?
Those playbill snatchers are just, you got to watch out for them. You can usually mark them, but careful.
So guys, usually I'd be in the background, you know, sending you my little notes and in the virtual studio chat that we have back here. But now I have to do it live. So unfortunately, we're getting to the end of our time for the show. And Carlos, we do have to have you back, and we will stay in touch. But Warren, does Joe have any questions for us? I think Joe has a couple of questions.
Okay.
I think we have an already standard question on the show at this point. Not that we have asked every guest, but our first guest, first episode guest, Bill Domain had a very interesting answer to this, and a little bit in tune with what you were just saying with your Wicked story. Best and worst performance experiences. What were they?
Worst experience. The first thing that comes to mind, and it was more of an audition. I was very young, and I think I thought highly of myself, like, oh yeah, I've got this all figured out. And when I say young, I mean I had to be 15, 16, and I took an audition for a scholarship for to study, and I showed up, and that's when it hit me that I was just unprepared. And I was also auditioning for the principal of the LA Phil at the time, who was Dennis Tremblay, who I studied with years and years later. And I had this performance audition, and it was devastating. I can still think of that. Oh man, it's just overwhelming, that feeling of how did I think that I was better than this? I mean, I got to a point mentally too where I was like, I should just stop playing. Like, if I can't respect the process, I should just stop playing. I went to a very dark place after that, and then snapped myself out of it just as quickly, thinking, you know what, you learned your lesson. From here, always prepared, always do the work, never think that you're going to nail it. There's always someone better. As a teacher used to say, there's always someone better than you. So always keep practicing. My best memory. Oh man. I would say not too long ago, doing a show. One of my best memories. I was doing a show called Bright Star by why can't I think of his name? Banjo player, comedian, Steve Martin.
Yeah.
A fantastic show if you haven't seen it. Great. Takes place in the 20s and the 40s. So there's a lot of like Appalachian style music, and then a lot of big band music. But we're playing this small quartet, banjo, guitar, piano, and drums on stage with the performers. And we get to be on stage in front, with the specials on, and we're playing to the audience. And that every night we did that, with 20 shows we did. And it was just so much fun and so fulfilling to see all these audience members all of a sudden engage to these musicians on stage, which you don't normally see. And so that was a huge, like, I don't want to say thumbs up, pat on the back for, these regulars that come to the show, but never get to see the musicians really, I like to say, flex. You see this fiddle player just tearing it up. I mean, and slapping the bass, wearing my overalls and my hat, my cowboy hat, slapping along. And finally, I guess for the musicians, I feel like getting the recognition that musicians deserve in the roles of music. Here we are providing this music, but obviously, I mean, we're all people, right? We do what we love because we love it. So that definitely, and there's so many great memories. So yeah, I think that answers the question. I could go on and on, but that's me.
Well, Carlos, yes, I think we're probably towards the end of our time, but we want to know, first of all, how do people get in touch with you? What are your social media links? What do you have going on upcoming? And what do you want to say to our folks out there?
Well, as far as getting a hold of me, right now I have content that I'm moving and all putting on Instagram, which you can find me under Bass Chops Live. And I tend to do a lot of when I play. If I'm doing musical theater, if I'm doing, and you'll see some of the things on there with the recording I did, the wedding I did. I played with a quartet not too long ago, a quintet, pardon me. So I'll always go live. If I've got a show, I'll go live. Bass Chops Live is the best place to find me. And I'm trying to move all that content onto YouTube, which is under the same name, Bass Chops Live. So if I have a show, and unfortunately you only see this ugly mug, but you'll get to hear the rest of the show as well. So that's a lot of fun. It's something I like doing just because, as you said, you just never know what's going to happen when you go live. So even if I'm in a studio, I try to record just a lot of people, never seen, what goes on in a studio. Like, oh, is this how you're making music for a movie or a commercial or a bump or, so, and to everyone that's listening or that sees this or even follows me or finds me, all I can say is thank you, and we as musicians appreciate you, because as I always say, without you there is no us. So thank you.
Well, very, very well spoken, and I can't think of a better way to conclude today's podcast. Carlos, we'd love having you on. Of course, we're going to stay in touch and meet again. And
Yes.
I just encourage everyone to go out, check out his content, keep on it, and however you can keep supporting him and all of us musicians. Try to do that. And for this show, that's a wrap.